Okay, welcome everyone. A very warm welcome to you. Today is the first Tuesday in June, and we've got a very exciting session of the Water School Africa lined up this time by from an organization and a person from Kenya. As usual, the session will run for about an hour and a half with about 40 minutes. John Macharia will be speaking for about 40 minutes, and then the floor will be open for questions, suggestions, reflections, Q&A. And my colleague Walter, who knows John very well and has worked, and they work together, will be introducing John in a minute. I also request everybody to please keep their microphones muted, because when we record it, then the background noise is minimized. And enjoy the session. Walter, over to you.
Thank you, Minnie, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to our session on sharing about water holding, water harvesting for the month of June. And it is my pleasure to introduce to you all our presenter for this session, John Macharia, who is the National Coordinator for the Schools and Colleges Permaculture Program in Kenya. I've known John for a very long time. I think it was 1988 when I first met him, and at that time he was working for the Resources-Oriented Development Initiative, which is one of the members now of Scope Kenya. And now for almost 10 years, John has been the national coordinator for Scope Kenya. So in a nutshell, John has been in agroecology for a very, very long time. So it is an honor to have him share his wealth of experience, particularly as regards rainwater harvesting work, and in particular with the schools that Scope Kenya is working with. So over to you, John, and we look forward to learning from your experience.
Okay, thank you, Walter, and welcome everyone to this presentation. I'm going to share good case studies on how, as an organization, we have been working with the schools in promoting the education in water harvesting and management in schools. Walter has just mentioned my name. I'm John Macharia, working for Scope Kenya as a national coordinator. Scope Kenya is a network that brings together member organizations who are NGOs and CBOs who promote agroecology practices in schools. We also do capacity building for the member organization and any other interested firms who want to acquire and promote permaculture in schools. So my presentation will go a long way to discuss water harvesting and management in few schools that we have been able to integrate the education on water harvesting. So let's go straight to the first slide. I just want to start by giving an introduction to especially people who don't come from Africa or Kenya, to be specific, so that they can understand the situation or the ground at which we work in. The first one is that 2/3 of Kenya, the land mass is located in arid and semi-arid areas. And Kenya is one of the countries that has been classified as water scarce country in the world, meaning that we don't have enough water for domestic use and specifically for irrigation purpose. Many people do depend on rainwater in terms of growing crops. The rivers and the springs, which nowadays, due to effects of climate change, are no longer reliable. The issue on water harvesting and management in the country is less emphasized on, both in schools and also at the community level. And even when we come to the government level, yes, we have good policies, but the implementation remains a challenge. Then in most of the schools or in our education system, you'll find that the issues around water is just taught theoretically, and the learners are not taken through the practical practices in either water harvesting or water management. So it's just mentioned in class, and this is for the purpose of passing the examination. And then also at the community level, you also find that the same things happen, that water management, water harvesting and management has not been taken as a priority when it comes to agricultural use. We go to the next. Yes, let's move to the second slide. So I've just explained that majority of schools in Kenya lack reliable access to adequate water for drinking and irrigation use. I've also talked about water harvesting not being a common practice, both in schools and community level. And then I've also talked about the issues around water not integrated in the school curriculum, and especially the practical part. The theory part is there, where it's just mentioned, but it's not practically done. And therefore, you find that due to mismanagement of water, and especially the surface runoff, most of the schools have experienced high level of erosion, leaving the compound eroded and bare without any vegetation. And to add on that, I've also talked about our education system, which has a big disconnect between what the learners are taught in class and what is happening outside the compound or outside the classroom. Yes, let's move on. I also wanted to give some reasons or causes on why we have water crisis in the country. One is the growing population, which increases the demand for water. Two is climate change that is being experienced nowadays, and this is due to prolonged drought and siltation of water bodies, especially the ocean. So you find that even the rivers that were reliable years back, they are no longer reliable because they become they are not reliable. And then there is also poor management of the little available water, both at household level and even at in school. And thirdly, due to urbanization, the growing of or the development of industries and any other economic growth activities, which also demands for more water. And then adequate knowledge and skills in water harvesting and management, both in schools and the community level. And on the other hand, we also have a limited budget allocation, both from the government and development partners, in terms of money being set aside to promote water harvesting and management. Let's move on. This is an example of a school near our office in Ruiru. The name is St. George's Primary School. And from this, you can realize that, yes, they have the roof, but water harvesting is not done, no gutters, no storage tank. And when water drops on the ground, you can see the kind of the erosion, the damage that is causing. And this cut across in many schools. So when you're talking about, I'm talking about less being done in terms of water harvesting. This now gives a good example on what is happening. Yes, let's move on. Yeah, this is another example of a school in Machakos. It's called Kimua Primary School. And you can also realize that water harvesting is also not done. The ground is very bare. All the topsoil has been eroded and no vegetation. And when I'm talking about even poor practices on water harvesting at community level, you will understand that the learners who went through this kind of a school, and today they are the parents. That means they grew up, they took their education in an environment that water harvesting was not done, there was no conservation done, and therefore they are likely to also practice the same when they go back at home. Yeah, let's move on to the next. Yeah, this is another example of an office block in the same school. And this is newly constructed, but you also realize that no water harvesting system that was put in place. So the gutters are just bare. I mean, there are no gutters, there is no water tank, so all issues around water harvesting has not been put in place. And years back, the same erosion will also take place. And remember, these are schools in semi-arid areas where we are talking about the learners or the school community do not have access to adequate amount of water, both for drinking and for irrigation purpose. And when it rains, then these are areas which experience high rate of flooding because of the heavy movement of the water. Yes, let's move on. I've talked about this in that whatever that is happening in the school is also happening at the community level, and most have no reliable access to water. I've said about that. Then two, surface runoff is not seen as a resource and therefore not harvested and properly utilized to support agricultural activities. So this is a resource that has been underutilized for many years. The issue on continuous dependency on rivers is no longer reliable. The rains is not reliable. And therefore, there is water insecurity at the community level. And as a result of that, you find that the water crisis is now becoming a source of conflict between communities and also human and wildlife. And these are communities in the pastoralist community who have huge number of animals to take care of, and there is less water. And then I had also talked about the support from the government and the development organizations. So yeah, let's move on. Yeah, this is another example of a farm that the owner of this farm took her education in the second school that I showed you, Kimua Primary. So you can realize that whatever that is being practiced here, there is a very miserable crop, and two, a lot of surface runoff, and that means that all the fertile soil has been eroded. And this is why I said that how in the environment at which children go through or take their education has an impact on their future activities when it comes to the farming. So you realize that this is a farmer who relies on this kind of maize for his food security and also for income. And these are the children from this farmer goes to the school that I showed you. So you realize that, and such schools do not have feeding program. So you realize that the rate at which food insecurity is affecting the schools and the communities is on a higher end. Yes, let's move on. Yes, that is also another example of a farmer who, and in this case, you realize that there are no mechanism, there are no structure in water harvesting, and therefore, and especially the surface runoff. And that is why you find that when it rains, depending on the intensity of the rainfall and also the gradient or the slopeness of the land, a lot of erosion takes place with less infiltration of that water. And this is a major cause of food and nutrition insecurity and poverty in this country, where many of the farmers depend on maize as a staple food and as a source of income. Yes, let's move on. I also wanted to show you a case whereby, as a result of mismanagement of the surface runoff, a lot of erosion is taking place and the roots are left bare. showing the rate at which the topsoil is being eroded from the farms to the rivers or the water bodies, and which is also causes the siltation. Yes, let's move on. Now, as an organization, we have our own intervention on how we are addressing the challenge. And this is in terms of how do we support the communities and the schools to overcome what I've already shown you. And as I said, we came up with an idea of integrating the education on water harvesting and management in schools, and to be specific, the practical part. Yes, let's move on. Yeah, our focus has been on the various type of water, sources of water. One is the roof water that we have already seen that it is not harvested and managed, stored. Two, there is surface runoff. There is also underground water through shower well. And there is also another aspect on grey water. And this is water that has already been utilized either in the kitchen, in the bathroom, and the like. So once we visit a school, we normally analyze what kind of source of water that they are able to manage without spending a lot of resources. And in most cases, we normally start with what they can manage as we go to whatever that requires a lot of resources. And for this case, I would like to give an example of the service runoff, because that one doesn't require a lot of resources to manage. And then I'll also give case studies on the roof water harvesting. Yes, let's move on. The main aim on how we go about it is first to stop the flow of water. Because we understand that when the water is flowing on the surface, there is less infiltration. And therefore, this is water that moves to the oceans and to the rivers with all the topsoil, and the land is left dry. Then we have stopped the water from flowing, which I'm going to demonstrate to you how. Then the next step is to store that water in the gardens. And this is by making swales and also making earth basins, which we call in permaculture, the banana circle. And the earth basin and even the swales or the terraces, they are also taught in class, and especially under the current form of education, the competence-based curriculum in Kenya, CBC, but they are just mentioned in class and they are not implemented out there. So the learners are not able to clearly get the idea on how this works. But for the purpose of passing the examination, that one is done. Then once water has been stored in swales and the earth basins or the banana circle, that water stays there, sits there, and within few minutes, it is able to sink in the ground, and it also spreads. And 30 minutes after the rains, that water is all gone. Then after that, we also establish other agricultural, agroecological practices. That is the growing of the cover crops, so that we minimize the evaporation. And thirdly, there is also the mulching, among others, and also growing of trees so that they can provide the shade. Yes, let's move on. So for us to do that, we normally start, step number one has always been sensitization and awareness creation in schools. This is a situation where we invite the parents. We also bring on board the school management and local leaders to sit down and discuss the issue around, have a dialogue around the issue around water, and then come up with a clear strategy on how we are going to go about it. And once this has been done, then it becomes very easy for even the parents to come on board and support the school in the establishment of the water system, water management system. And two, it also becomes a good, it also becomes a training part for them to also acquire the knowledge and the skills to also go and do it back at home. So let's move on. So that is the first step in terms of that. Then the second step is capacity building. where we walk into the schools and we start taking the practical part in terms of the training. And for us to do that, we normally use an A-frame, and an A-frame is used to determine the contours, because the whole idea is not to have terraces that will drive away water from the garden, as it is done out there, but two, it's swales that goes along the contours to harvest and store that water in a very reduced rate of the flow. So the learners are taken through on the process on how to make an A-frame and how to use it. Let's move on. This is also a case study on how they are taken through in terms of the use. The first one was on how to make it. This one is now how to use it. And that is done from classroom, and then we go to the garden, the practical part in the gardens. Yes, let's move on. After that, after the contour line has been marked, the community and the learners are taken through the process of excavating now the swales along the contour, and also excavating the earth basin I talked about I had talked about, so that when it rains, that water is collected, stored, it is stopped from flowing, then it is stored in the swales and the other basins, it is sinks and spread. And that means that we are able to sink and store thousands of liters of water on the ground. And this is water that could have found its way to the rivers and to the lakes. Yes, let's move on. Okay, now the rain has come, it has rained, and because the learners have been taken through the training, they're able to go and monitor how the water moves into the gardens. The first picture shows the water that has already filled in a water basin or other basin that is filled up with water. And the learners here are seen trying to make a connection so that that water moves to the next swale. So, and then the second one, they also seen they are just having a good time looking at and observing how the water now is moving along the swale. And inside the swale, you realize that there are also some banana holes that after the rains and water has been soaked in the soil, then the planting will be done. So this one gives the learners an opportunity to connect what they are learning in classroom in the making of the soils and the other basins to the practical bit and how water is moving. And it's also a good way of nurturing a young generation that in future will be in a position to harvest and hold that water for the purpose of agricultural use and also for domestic use. Yes, let's move on. Yeah, now here, this is a school in Nyanza, Ugorwe Primary, which won the award last year. And now you can see that the water is already held. It is stored in the swales. And this, as I said, it will sit there for a few minutes, it will sink and spread. And that means that after soaking that water in the soil, it will take, even during the dry season, you'll find that the land is not dry, and a farmer or a school can continue growing the food crops using less amount of water to sustain the crops. Yes, let's move on. Yeah, this is also another good example of the school I talked about, Kimua, in Machakos County. We have a complete earth basin on one end, and we have the same filled up with water on the other end. Yes, let's move on. Okay, after making the swales and the earth basins, the next step is always the establishment of the garden layout and also the planting of the cover crops. And for this case, we are talking about sweet potatoes, we have the pumpkins. We also introduce other drought-resistant crops like cassava and the like. We also have grass like vetiver that is also integrated, and other form of herbs like lemongrass. And this is to ensure that that band is strong and it cannot be broken by the water when it rains. Yes, let's move on. Yeah, now this is a good example. The same banana circle that, or the basin that you have seen, for this case now you'll realize that there are already bananas planted. They are doing well during the dry season without a requirement of additional water. And on the right side, you also realize there is another banana circle that is well covered with the cover crops, that is sweet potatoes and pumpkin. And you can realize now the transformation that has taken place from the bare ground to what you are able now to see. And this is through just holding water, harvesting and holding that surface runoff on the in the ground. Let's go on. Yeah, I've talked about the participation of young people, the learners, in the garden layout. And the garden layout are also done following the same contours as the soil, just to ensure that all the water that drops in that ground does not flow, but it is infiltrated in the soil, and as a rule, no single drop of water is supposed to leave the school compound or that facility. So in any case, we normally go out and get water from the outside, water from outside, and drive it into the school gardens so that we have enough. Yes, let's move on. And remember, in permaculture, we normally talk about working with nature and not against nature. And that is why you'll find that the kind of the soils or water harvesting system and the garden layout goes along the contour. This is another example of Ugorwe, a case study on Ugorwe Primary and Junior School in Nyanza. In the first case, these are parents participating in the preparation of the gardens. And on the other end, you have now the complete, well-prepared gardens ready for planting. Yes, let's move on. So those are the kind of the garden layout that I'm talking about. That if you look at this is the same school. On the left, you find the garden, well-prepared gardens. And on the right-hand side, you also see now it has rained, planting has been done, and the water is being held and stored in the garden, and it infiltrates, as I said, and it causes no erosion. Yes, let's move on. So those are the kind of the gardens that I'm talking about. The same school, the gardens on the left-hand side, and now the gardens with well-established diversity of food crops on the right-hand side. And this demonstrates how a school transforms its landscape from bare ground into the productive greener landscape. Yes, let's move on. That is another example of now a maturing food forest in a school. This is in Thika Rescue Children's Center, which is also undergoing the same transformation. But this is started way back in 2021, and you can realize between 2021 and now, from a bare ground, you can see now the situation is improving. Yes, let's move on. Okay, this is an example on water that has been stored in water tanks. The learners are also shown how to collect that water from the tank and use it for agricultural use, especially in watering the vegetables and the gardens. Let's move on. Yep. On the left-hand side, this is a soil with mature bananas. You realize that after the rains, water is held in the soils. And as a result of that, if you look at the right-hand side, you find a fully productive gardens, which now supports the feeding program in schools. Yes, let's move on. Yeah, that is also an example of cover crops. We have sunk the water on the ground. We have stored all the thousands of liters in the service, and you realize that after planting the cover crops, the ground is no longer bare. The soil is no longer bare. It's well covered with a green blanket of cover crop. And this reduces the rate of evaporation. It increases production, reduces erosion. And this is how schools are now able to support their feeding program. Yes, let's move on. Yeah, this is also another section of a garden at Thika Rescue Center, where we have planted moringa. We have integrated trees in terms of medicinal moringa and also other food crops. And you realize that initially by 2021, this ground was bare. But to date, you can see the kind of the transformation, the vegetation that has developed. And this is a good way on how the schools and the communities can transform even the dry and the bare ground into productive and with a good conservation of the biodiversity, just by practicing water harvesting and holding on the soil. Yes, let's move on. Yeah, you remember when I started, I showed you a school that was bare. The same school was bare. This is by 2023, early 2023. But you can see a transformation of about 1.5 years where, and this is St. Denis school where Walter, you visited once. You can see the kind of the conservation that is taking place, the transformation in terms of the landscape. It's no longer bare. It's no longer sandy. It's green and productive with the food crops and other shrubs. And there is production of good quality oxygen, such that the learners, when they're in class, they can enjoy fresh air. And when they get out, they can sit under the shade. And two, it has also increased the learning opportunities for them. And they're able to connect with their learning in classrooms and what is happening outdoor. And I'm sure that those who will leave this school will go and practice the same, because they would want to live in the same environment as what they went through during their school time. Yes, let's move on. Yeah, at the end, the gardens are productive. They are able to harvest the produce and take to their kitchen. Let's move on. And they're able to eat healthy food. And as seen here, this is Ugorwe Primary and Junior School, as I said, in Nyanza, where these are grade 3 learners lining up to receive or to get food during lunch hour. And this is food that has been grown in their school, together with herbal tea from lemongrass that they're able to eat. So the component of healthy eating is brought on board, and children are able to see how food is being produced, how it's cooked, and how it is utilized. And that is a good way on how we can reduce food and nutrition insecurity in the country, and also poverty. Yes, let's move on. Yeah, I talked about we were dealing with the surface runoff. Another practice that we have also been promoting is getting that water on the ground during the dry season. And this is by making shallow wells, where we also fix solar powered water pumps. And that water is now pumped into storage tank, which are elevated above the ground. And it's used for irrigating now the gardens during the dry season, to support the plants with retro water. Yes, let's move on. Another practice has been the harvesting of water and putting it, the roof water, and putting it, storing it in water tanks. And that water this one is more specifically now for domestic use, and retro for agricultural use. And the other water is also stored in fish ponds. Yes, let's move on. And this is just to increase the diversity. Yes, let's move on. Forget about that. Yes, let's move on. Yeah, the other form of water harvesting we have also been promoting is the use of the shower wells and the placement of hardy pumps. So now, having discussed that, or having gone through that, as a way forward, one is that it is very much important for the government and development partners to integrate the education and practices on water harvesting and management in schools, so that and other learning institutions, so that the learners are given the opportunity to have that practical experience on how to go about it, and they're likely to spread that knowledge back at home. Two, it is also important for us to involve young people in dialogue and decision making concerning water management. And in this case, you realize that the current generation grew up when rains were reliable, rivers were reliable as sources of water. But today, we are bringing up a generation where rains is not reliable and the rivers are drying up. And therefore, there is a need for us to integrate, to involve them in dialogues and decision on how they can actually adopt to climate resilient agricultural practices or land use practices, so that they can continue producing food. It is also important for the development organizations and the government to increase the resources or the budgetary allocation to promote water harvesting and management system, because this is the only way we can address the issues around hunger, poverty, and others, especially in the realization of sustainable development goals. And the other one is, it is also important for us to do good documentation on evidence-based case studies, so that they can be used for learning purposes through sharing with other schools and other stakeholders, and including the government. Third, the last one is, there is also important to develop and distribute learner-friendly materials with information on water harvesting and management, because in most cases you find that many schools do not have libraries, and even those which have libraries, they don't have materials where the learners can walk in and learn about water harvesting and management system. So that one is also very much important. And as I conclude, I may say that I've always been telling people that crops or plants do not require rain for them to grow. They require water. So it is important for us now to come up with creative ways on how we can harvest and hold water, so that we can use it for growing crops, and like waiting for the rains to come so that we can grow crops. So if we continue using the old method of thinking, that we wait for the rain so that we can grow crops, with the increasing population, then it means that we'll continue to experience hunger. We are going to continue experiencing droughts, among other challenges, and poverty. But it is our high time now to come together and develop creative strategies on water harvesting and management for us to address food and nutrition insecurity, poverty, and the like. And something that I did not mention, you remember when I began my presentation, I said that we use a whole school development approach where we bring on board the parents. The parents who have gone through the training that I've talked about, they have ended up forming self-help groups, through which they are able now to transfer this knowledge and practices from schools to the community level. And through this, we have seen and we have experienced farmers who are experienced hunger and who had very little incomes from their gardens, now having a nutritious food and also increased household level. So through this, is a holistic way on ensuring that we address the socioeconomic challenges that are affecting the human beings in a sustainable and holistic way. Maybe the last one. The last one. Thank you. That is what I had to share with you. For those organizations within Kenya, they are free to come and visit, to have on-site visits. And towards the end of June, we are organizing a field day that will bring various schools and stakeholders at Ugorwe Primary and Junior School, so that they can come and learn how the school has transformed its landscape, all the way from bare to food secure, just by water harvesting and storing it in the service. Thank you very much. In case of any question, I'm ready to answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, John, for a very, very well illustrated, informative, very clear presentation. And also thank you for the regenerative work that you are doing in school communities. I think the pictures tell a beautiful story of the impact of that work in the school communities that are part of your network. So thank you very much. And I always remember your concluding remark that crops don't need rain, they need water. I think there's a lot to think about on that statement. And yeah, and thank you for keeping to time. So we do have enough time to have a conversation about this issue. So I think we will welcome any comments, questions, remarks. Feel free to put up your hand, and then you'll be given a chance to make your contribution. So welcome to our discussion, everyone. Thank you.
I just want to add, thank you, John. And the one another powerful comment of yours which stood out is that the generation that's grown up just already has grown up with ample water underground and in the rivers, and the younger generation today is facing the opposite. So that's a really stark reminder that the work that you're doing is more and more needed, so that the next generation then grows up with ample water in the ground and does not face want. So thank you. Yes, wide open for questions and discussions. Zachary? Zachary, we can't hear you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. John, for that inspiring presentation. Excellent. I would say it is excellent. I also wanted to inform you that one of our plans, that is REDEP, we are planning to visit your projects. These projects we have seen, we want to bring farmers there, we want to bring young students from schools so that you can inspire them. And I think for me, I'm very happy that when we come there, we shall see plenty of things. The other thing I wanted to say is that I think we need to work more closely now, like the Kenyan organizations who are interested in this topic of water holding and water retention. We need to work together so that we can strengthen our partnership, we can strengthen our relationship, we can help learn the best practices from all of us. So I just want to say thank you and congratulations for what you are doing there. But we shall come to see what you are doing there so that our farmers can learn this, and then try to apply the same on their farms. Thank you very much, John.
Thank you very much, Mr. Makanya. You are highly welcomed anytime. Thank you.
Thank you.
So anybody wants to also, you can also put your questions in the chat if there's a question being answered, or ask as you go along. John, I had a question. There's Esther. I'll ask you the question after. Esther, please go ahead. You have to unmute yourself and please go ahead.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Thank you so much, John, for the presentation. That is a very, very clear picture of actually what happens when we harvest water in schools and the abundance of food that grows. We also do what John is doing, and we've seen communities change, not only the schools and the children, but also the neighboring communities. And the schools have become centers of reference for communities to learn from, to get planting material from, especially things like sweet potatoes, bananas, and they even started tree seedlings in the school where children take the seedlings home. But the beautiful thing is that where we have the school feeding program is that the gardens have supplied enough fruits and vegetables for the children, and we have a reported case of improved nutrition, improved attendance by the children in school, and also improved performance in the performance of the children in school because they're able to eat healthy, and also there is reduced allergies because some of the schools used to buy vegetables that had toxic pesticides, but now they're able to grow organic vegetables and they're able to supply their kitchens, and children eat safe and healthy foods. In places where we've done herbs and trained the teachers and children to use herbs, the herbs they've used like lemongrass, rosemary, and mint, and other herbs have helped them overcome issues of allergies, chest problems, and other issues and challenges they were facing. So yes, what John is sharing is very good. And it's a project that should be recommended for all schools in Africa and other parts of the globe. But more than that, as Kenyans, we need to advocate that this is the direction our schools need to take. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. John, would you like to respond to that?
Yes. Thank you very much, Esther. Yes, Esther, I've worked with her very closely, and Rodi is one of the member organization of SCOPE, and I'm very much aware of the kind of work that they are doing, and we've been interacting very much. Yes, whatever Esther have said is that yes, it is true that where we have transformed landscapes and the schools are able to produce food and they have initiated a feeding program, you realize that the attendance is always high. And two, there is also the improved academic performance because the children are able to, the learners are able to connect the classroom learning and what they are doing practically out there. And remember that as human beings, we retain more information and we learn more by doing and not by being taught theoretically. So the issue of also improved discipline because children spend part of their time working on the gardens, and therefore there is that sense of responsibility that they are not left idle to just play around. So all that, and as I said, having transformed landscapes also increases the running opportunities. So all these are what the benefits that comes along with the water harvesting and holding, because the opposite of that is that where water has been left to go to the oceans and the like, and communities have been left without food, there is no income, there is no feeding program, then it means that even the issues around health and quality education and also health care, they are not addressed, and communities have all these challenges. Yes, thank you for that, Esther. I concur with you.
To add to that, I was at a presentation by Groundswell recently, and they've done studies in terms of malnutrition, and if children don't get adequate good food to eat, which you can see is coming through the work that John, you guys are doing. If they don't get, then they are stunted. Their height, they don't grow, and there is even brain scans have shown that there's irreparable damage to the brain at the developmental time when children are developing. So it's really a very powerful work that schools are actually able to hold the water, grow the food, which children can then have during the school days, during the time when they're attending school, at the time of their lives when they need it the most. So thank you. Wonderful. Okay, so I think we'll take Dalend first because his hand was up first, and then Eustace, and then and Mwande. Dalend, please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much, John. That's a wonderful presentation. The work that you're doing in Kenya actually also touches our hearts here in Zimbabwe. I like the part of your presentation where you talk about the school feeding program. I think we would need to actually borrow a leaf from what you are doing in Kenya. I just wanted to know, how much time does it take you as an organization maybe between the time you start to implement and think about we need to support our schools and the times that you then become self-sufficient, if at all you ever get self-sufficient or you get some other support from friends? How much time does it take you? Thank you, John.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, to quickly answer your question. One, may I first, from what Min has said, is that during the sensitization and awareness creation, this is where we normally talk about the issue around nutrition in relation to human development and education to parents, so that they're able to understand that when their children come to school without food, stay entire day without eating, then that has, or even when they are eating food that is not well balanced, that has a negative impact in the development of their brain and the physical development, and also the education, the performance of their education. And once they understand that, then they are able to work in schools and provide and work on the school ground to ensure that food is produced both in schools and also at the community level, so that children can access nutritious food. Two, now coming to a question on how long do we take, I must say that we came up with a package whereby we go step by step and we walk along the process of implementation with the community, the school community. I say that we normally start with the sensitization, which normally takes 3 days, because day one, we have to meet with the school management. The second day we meet with, we have to also talk to the teachers. And day three, and the learners. And day three, we also have to have a meeting with the community members. These are the parents and other development local leaders within, so that they all come together and develop a common vision and have a common understanding that even before we start the implementation, this is a situation at hand, and we also come up with a strategy on how to go about it. Then secondly, we spend 10 days, and these are days, the training, capacity building days, where the school stakeholders are taken through the theory and practical training in terms of the permaculture, all the way from the ethics to the principles, to the practices, and the designing of the gardens and the water management system is done. So after the 10 days, we also normally come up with a sustainability structure or a system whereby all the stakeholders are involved in sustaining the gardens. And that is why you find that you will find on daily basis, the learners and the teachers spend some time in the garden, either in the morning or in the afternoon after classes. And this is on daily basis. Two, you also find the community members also coming once in a week to come and support the system. So when we start, I say that for a food forest, from our end, it should have a minimum of 10 different types of crops. If it's 9, then we don't qualify that as a food forest. And these are crops that are short, which are early maturing, and others are late maturing, so that you find that during the planting, we'll integrate both the annuals and the perennials together, depending on their characteristics. Therefore, you'll find that, if I give an example of vegetables like cowpeas, which only takes 3 weeks for them to mature. It means after we start, the first 1 month, the school will have started now harvesting vegetables that mature very early, like amaranth and the cowpeas. As we progress, you find that other crops come on board being ready, and from day one to the progressively, you'll find that at no any given time you will walk in that garden and fail to harvest a certain variety of food crops, because you'll find that yes, there are those that matured early, others will take 3 months, 6 months, 1 year as you move on. So the most important thing here is the management of water, the soil fertility, and also the cropping cycle. With those three, the school is able to produce enough food to feed the learners. And then something else that I may also put across is that we don't use a demonstration garden whereby we just plant a few vegetables. The gardens depend on, remember here we are talking about meeting the people's needs. So we normally calculate how many the learners are in that school and how many teachers that will benefit from that project. So that is why we normally go full scale, so that we produce enough to meet the food requirement of the entire population within the school. And the reason as to why we also train the parents is that they also go and start practicing the same at their household level, so that during the holidays they can be assisted by the children to manage the gardens, and two, to ensure that the learners are also, or the children are also eating healthy food when they are back at home, and to also minimize theft of the food in the school compound, because if the community remains food insecure, then they will become the source of insecurity when it comes to the theft of the food crops in at the school ground. So that is how we normally approach it, in a holistic manner. Yes.
Thank you, John. I think you have given a very comprehensive response there. There are also questions in the chat, for example, from Faizo, who is asking about safety for the children. And maybe after your response, I have something to share on that as well. And there's also a question from Prosper regarding the challenges that you face, particularly in terms of support from the government. Do you have support from government and from other stakeholders in terms of the work that you are doing? So there are those questions in the chat as well to think about. And I would like to come in when you have given your thoughts on the safety for children.
Okay, thank you, Walter and Faisal. In terms of safety, yes, we normally put that in place when we are designing the project and the water holding, structures, because one, we don't make a deep water holding structures like that basin where children can drown. That's one. Two, we also according to the operational structure, at no any given time, children are supposed to walk in the gardens alone. They are always escorted by the teachers, and even when the parents are on board. And because this is an educational program whereby when the children are going to the gardens, they go to hand in hand with the teacher who explains to them. Like, for example, if they are doing the planting, they are together with the teacher whom we have trained, so that they are guided on how to go about it. Two, they also subdivided in very small groups, a group of about 10 per one teacher, such that when it comes to the management of these children, you don't take a whole class like 40 of them at the same time, but we have small units. And this is to ensure that there is that safety when it comes to working in the gardens. And where we have water holding water pans, we normally fence around. We put a fence around, and we put a good chain ring, so that water, and this is a situation where we have already put a dam liner that this water does not sink in the ground. So it's water that has been retained for use in irrigating the gardens. So there is the use of fencing around the water pan, so that children cannot access it and maybe drown in that water. In terms of the challenges, we've been receiving support from the government. I must say that when we started this work some years back, we had a challenge because we did not have a policy that was supporting this kind of work outdoor, based on the former education system that was very theoretical, and children were not supposed to go out of class or to have practical activities. But now with the introduction of the new education system, which is competence-based, where children are supposed to learn more on practicals than in theory, then it has given us a good opportunity to now start carrying out these activities without any hindrance. And you realize that, like I gave an example of another basin, it is taught in class under the curriculum-based, competence-based curriculum, but children are also supposed to go and do it out there. But you realize that some of the teachers do not have that adequate knowledge on how these structures are done. So this becomes an opportunity for us to come in and fill in that gap, where we work hand in hand with the teachers to implement that within the school compound. And then thirdly, yes, we've been receiving not the monetary support, but we've been receiving in-kind support from the government in terms of the teachers, because they are paid by the government. And we have seen this, for those teachers whom we have trained, they normally go out of their way to work even extra hours, even during the weekend, to support the project, but without receiving any payment from our end. The land that we use, most of the schools that we work in are public schools, where the land is under the government. And yes, it is just given to us freely. So what we get in terms of support from the government is the labor, in terms of the teachers, the land, the policies, yes, like that. And then for us to implement, we also emphasize on mobilization of local resources. Right? For example, the planting materials, sweet potatoes, cassava, banana suckers, they are all contributed by the parents. So you'll find that we spend a very little money in terms of the implementation of the project, because the resources are mobilized locally. Over to you, Walter.
Thank you very much, John. Just to add one thing about the safety, in addition to what you have said, is that most of the rainwater harvesting structures in schools, they are really temporary water sinkholes. So you find that soon after the rains, within a matter of minutes, the water soaks into the ground. So the structures are basically meant to trap the runoff water and allow it time to sink. So it really doesn't pose a safety risk. And as John has said, most of these are designed to be shallow so that they don't become a danger to the children. Thank you very much. I think there is another question in the chat as well from Raidep Zachary Makanya, who is asking about your experiences in terms of using dam liners, whether for how long they last in terms of holding water, because when they're exposed to the elements, they tend to break down over time. I don't know whether you have experience of how long they actually last before they start breaking down.
Thank you, Zachary, for that question. The problem with the dam liners is when they are exposed to direct sunlight, when they are hit by the sunlight directly without water, they tend to break down very fast. When they have water and there is that vegetation that is grown around, so they are shaded, they tend to last longer. So a dam liner will go for from a minimum of about 5 years onward. So the ones that we have used, we've not seen any breakdown. So I can't tell exactly. It all depends on how it is managed.
There were a couple of people who had raised their hands earlier, Eustace and the Mwande Trust. Are your questions answered, or would you still like to ask? There's space now.
Yeah, I would like to say something. I just want to comment on the presentation. The presentation is quite unique, and I'm happy that these guys are telling stories of change. They are also experts in swales and earth dams, and also groundwater recharge. So I'm happy, and I feel that with the continuation in partnership, we can do more on the ground. But I do have a question to John. I just want to know whether they work with community farmers or they just work with the school kids. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your compliment. When, as an organization, when Scope was established, the major focus was to work with the schools, because we were feeling that the young people are being left out of development, and many organizations focused on working with communities. So that is why you find that most of our work, around 70% of our work, is within the schools. But along the way, we have found ourselves in a situation where the parents have become so interested in the kind of work we are doing, and we are now coming up with a structure on how do we also support them in terms of the kind of the work we are doing. But because we don't have the capacity to start working with the different kind of farmer groups out there, the starting point has been we use schools as our training ground. So, right, if I give an example of Ugorwe Primary School that I've talked about and junior school, the parents around that community who have already formed, 26 of them who have already formed a community self-help group, they normally walk in the school to come and learn some of these good practices. And when we have these trainings, like the other day we had a training on poultry management. The training was also held in the school. That means the school now becomes a learning center for the children and also for the community members. And then what they learn, they go and practice back at home. So that is a kind of the system that we are using. And then we have also identified those who are very passionate parents, and we have trained them as TOTs, so that they are the one now guiding the other community members out there. And I can attest to you today that they are doing very good work without any support from a field staff employed by any organization. The work is being done by the community TOTs who have been trained in the school. And the gate is open. They can walk in the school anytime to come and learn. So that has also increased the good working relationship between the school and the community.
Thank you very much, John. Before Eustace comes in, I just wanted to add that Scope Kenya is part of a regional network of Scope country chapters in Uganda, Malawi, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Eswatini. And as a network, we have what we call a whole school approach to school gardening. And in this approach, we see the school not as an island in the community, but as an integral part of the community. So when we say whole school, we mean that the parents, most of whom are farmers, are also part of the school. And in that sense, therefore, we don't forget them in whatever will be happening in the school. So we talk of school communities rather than schools, which tend to be islands in the community. So thank you very much, John. Eustace?
Yeah, thank you very much, Walter. Yeah, even in Uganda we have the scope chapter, where I'm the vice chairman of the board. But my parent organization, AFAD, has also been implementing this kind of work for quite some time. And even our office is designed around that. What I have loved mostly about our approach is the involvement of the stakeholders, where they can take charge of their destiny. Among the obstacles that we have had all along was the animal from the community members that could come and damage the plants that had been planted, but through use of the stakeholders, that one was managed. Then another issue that I can add, that I've had testimonies in one school where we worked. The school became cooler, according to the testimony by the head teacher. When used to become hot before the project, children, the pupils could undress, and it would be embarrassing, especially if girl children undressed in front of male teachers. So, but this one no longer happened after adopting this approach. Yeah. Then another thing is that even during our open days, pupils appreciated the shades that were created in the schools, and they were always making role plays to indicate that they could even start doing hot times during breaks, which even improved the performance and the enrollment. In one of the schools where I worked, enrollment doubled, but even the performance, that school had never got a first grade since it was introduced in the 50s. But after working with us for about 2 years, they got 3 first grades. So I want to appreciate your support, Walter. But I also want to appreciate the other partners like BioGi who have worked with us on the same approach. But I have also learned a lot from John. John, thank you. Yes, one thing that I learned was that you start with the low-cost approaches. So thank you very much. I think it has been very educative.
Thank you very much, Eustace. I'm happy to see you after many days.
Yeah, thank you, Eustace, for the sharing experiences and also for the compliments. For those who are new to this platform or forum, kindly add your email address in the chat so that we can add you to the mailing list, and then you will be notified about future events. So do feel free to join this forum and be part of Water School Africa.
I think Irene has her hand up. Irene, would you like to ask your question
Yes,
now?
please.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, and thank you very much. Greetings to everyone. I'm Irene Ngambi from Temvelo, and we appreciate SCOPE. We are in a forum called WASH, Water, Sanitation and Hygiene. And most of the talkings there, when we talk of water, it more goes to drilling. But we appreciate that in Temvelo, we are training communities on agroforestry, and now we have learned more on water harvesting, which is very good for us. And we see that the activities we are implementing, they are actually not overusing the water. I just wanted to find out from John about the drilling aspect. Is it part of it or it's not part of that? I want to learn about that. And also just to appreciate that here in Eswatini, we are also part of the group on the greening the schools in the nation under the program Education for Sustainable Development. And we have contacted the schools and we're working already with some schools, and we see the interest that they have, and we believe that we'll do better, though we lack the financial aspect. Thank you very much, Mr. Water, and also John, for the presentations.
Yeah, thank you very much for your compliment and for the question, a good one. During my presentation, I said that we normally start with what the community is able to have to access or avail without you spending a lot of money. And drilling of boreholes is very expensive, especially in this country, where a school would require not less than 1 million Kenya shilling to do that. So our focus has always been empowering the communities with the knowledge and skills that one is affordable and accessible. And we are working with the communities who are not able to feed themselves, who are not able to pay the school fees and meet other and to pay their bills. So if we were to start with the drilling, then we'll be driving them away from development work. So I said that we normally do the analysis, and we find, depending on that, the locality of that community, school community, what is it that is accessible, and what is it that they can afford. And through this, you find that they're able, we normally promote the simple type of skills, and that they're able to replicate back at the community level without requiring any money from anyone. So the drilling can always come as a last resort, where we have already exhausted the others. But based on our experience, we are working with the communities where we receive maybe like 3 or 4 months of rainfall. And this water, when it drops on the ground, I said that it runs all the way to the lakes and the ocean. And the strategy here is to stop that water from going to the ocean and the lakes, and make sure that we store it on the ground, where it can be used for other purposes, like the production of food and the fish farming, and also for domestic use. So yeah, that is what I have to share for now. That as an organization, we have not gone to the drilling part. We are just promoting simple technologies that are affordable and accessible to the farmers and the school community. Sorry.
Thank you very much, John. And there's a question in the chat from Komonsira about the conflicts over water, as well as the integration of water management in the school curricula. That's something you might want to comment about.
Yes, thank you, Walter. About water, the conflict about water, I said that with the increasing population and the need for water, and the drying of the rivers and other water bodies, you find that we have been the communities have been, there has been a conflict between communities, and also against the wildlife. So I said, as a principle, no single drop of water should leave the facility. So within the school compound, no single drop of water should go out of that. And what does that one mean? If each and every school community or a household is able to harvest the available water, either through roof water harvesting and store it in tanks, or even in water pans, or that water is harvested and soaked in the water in the soil. That means the issue of conflict will be addressed in a very simple way. And again, it is also important for this. I said in one of my recommendations that it is important for the discussion, the topic on water harvesting and management be integrated well in the school curriculum and other learning institutions, so that the learners are given the opportunity to acquire the knowledge and skills on water management and how to avoid some of these as a way of avoiding this conflict that people will fight against each other, or people will be killing the wild animals which are coming on their farms to come and look for water. Yes, this is something that needs to be addressed all the way from the educational aspect to the policy and the practices on the ground.
Thank you very much, John. Yeah, just to emphasize that the work that you are doing is actually a way of preventing the conflicts, because when rain falls, normally it doesn't choose where it falls. Everyone gets the rain. And with the skills that Scope Kenya is sharing, everybody is able to trap the rain and retain it on their own land, so that nobody has to then become jealousy of the rain or the water at other people's properties. So it's really a way of preventing conflicts. We have a few minutes to the end of our session, and if there is any other pressing comment or question, we can have it before we conclude our session. And I can see a question in the chat on what is the situation in Kenya. I'm not sure what that is referring to.
It's before that, Swamba says that in Burkina Faso, children are on holidays during the rainy season. They restart courses during the dry season when access to water is a big challenge. So what is the situation in Kenya?
Okay, now I get the question. Yes.
Can I add one more thing to that? Could you also say something about what was the time frame? How long did it take from those first dry pictures that you showed us to the green, beautiful, lush, abundant gardens that you had? What was the time frame it took from that to digging the swales, holding the water, and harvesting the abundance? So both questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Starting with the first one about the situation in Kenya, yes, we are still experiencing. We are still in the rainfall season because we are receiving rains. The schools are children are in schools, and to us, it doesn't matter when we are doing the work. It doesn't matter whether the school is on or off, because in terms of, we normally take our time to select the school that we have to work with. We engage the stakeholders, and then we also come up with an implementation plan whereby if the schools are on holiday, then the project will start during the holiday, and the learners will be invited, the parents will be invited, because they all understand the essence on why they are doing that. So with us, it doesn't matter whether the school is on or off, because even during the school holiday, we also come up with sustainability structure that children will still work in schools, parents will work in school, and even the teachers will still be in school, but to continue managing the project. Because you'll find that in some schools we have small livestock like the poultry project, which has to be attended to even during the holiday season. We like implementation, especially on the excavation of the swales and the earth burns during the dry season, because as a principle, it's also not very good to work on wet soil because you'll compact it more. So we put up the structures during the dry season, and when the rains comes, that is when it will find the structure in place, and we are able to have water and store it in the soil. In terms of the time frame, I've given an example of a school where we started working in February 2023, and by September 2023, same year, there was total transformation, and we were even able to hold a field day for other schools to come and learn that kind of transformation. If you look at some of the crops like sweet potatoes and cassava, they grow very fast, they establish very fast, and within a duration of about 3 to 4 months, the ground is covered. So that is why I re-emphasized on the integration of the different types of food crops, starting from the annual crops to perennial crops, early maturing, and those ones that take longer time for them to mature. So yes, that transformation starts from day one going on.
Marvelous,
Yeah,
marvelous.
Yes.
John, that's so fantastic to hear. I know with the work that we do in India, we always call it 6 months of magic, because it does not take long for the earth to respond to the water we hold on. And seeing the example you've given us, that really is the kind of magic we can all bring about. And you know, somebody's asked to say a bit about the Water School Africa, and that is the point of this forum, that we share this learning of how to really, within our communities, the methods we use, the simple, easy to access methods that we can hold water, and with that water create abundance and greenery and nutrition and food security on the land. So this forum is for everybody who wants to come, learn, share with each other, with us, to be able to hold water in simple ways on our land and regreen the planet. So if anybody has you know, ideas, thoughts, work that they're doing, would like to contact us, the email is in the chat. And we also have a website called waterschools.org. So past presentations are there. Today's presentation will be put over there, and you can contact each other directly. You can contact the presenters directly. Exchange visits was something somebody was asking, can we come and learn? Do contact each other, visit each other, learn from each other, and make the land green and abundant again. That is what will help us resolve the issues around climate change on the planet. All of us doing what we can in our regions and our backyards. We're almost at the end of our session. Any last thoughts from anybody? Walter, would you like to give a vote of thanks?
Yes, Minnie, thank you. Actually, before I say express my gratitude, I would like to add on the issue of school holidays. That, as John is saying, it doesn't matter whether the school is in session or not. The stakeholders still find a way of taking care of what they've invested in on the school land. And I just want to add that the secret to that is that we need to inspire and motivate the learners and the teachers to do more, to work beyond the call of duty. And that is done by making sure that whatever is produced from this work, first and foremost, it is given to the learners, and so that they can benefit from the work that they are doing. And once that happens, they become so inspired, so motivated to keep doing the work, whether it's holiday or not, they will still have that commitment. So the products or harvests from the school gardens should not be sold before the children have access to these products. The children should benefit from these products. It is the results of their sweat, and they should really be motivated to keep doing this all the time. I really want to thank John Macharia for a wonderful presentation, taking time to share the wealth of experience that Scope Kenya has gathered over the years. And I also want to thank each and every one of you for taking time to be part of this celebration of water on the landscape. Let's really keep working together, and because I think we all are aware that Africa is a water deficit environment, and we need to all work towards holding water on the land so that we can restore abundance on our land. So thank you very much, everyone, and let's keep working together. Let's keep in touch. Let's keep sharing. Let's keep connecting. And finally, I want to say that we have these sessions every first Tuesday of the month. And we already have a presenter for next month in July, first Tuesday of July. And we will have a presentation from a young man, Daniel Chinkunda, who is doing very good work with Tikondwe Freedom Gardens in central Malawi. He has kindly agreed to share his experiences, which are actually intergenerational, because the work that he's doing was started by his late father, Dr. Chinkunda. So we really look forward to learning from Daniel Chinkunda in our next session. So we are all welcome to join us in the next session. Thank you.
2nd of July. Second of July, Walter. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, and goodbye for now. Have a good day, and we meet again in a month's time.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, John, Walter. Go well.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.